All right, we are live, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Lake County. I'm your host, David Rich. Have two very special and recurring guests, especially Dr. Mary Ruwart here. She's been on the show many times. Hello, Dr. Mary. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
Good. And William Henry, who's been on the show once before and is on again. Today, we're going to talk about the federal reclassification of marijuana being gone from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, what that means, the pros, the cons, and we're going to talk about other stuff like hemp and so on and so forth. William, you want to kick this off for us?
Sure. Yeah. The DEA, I think in the just last day has wrapped up their hearings for now. And it looks like, everything went forward the way that they wanted it to, at least for Schedule 3. It looks like they probably have enough support, I believe, to get that scheduling done, which opens up a lot of other options.
It hasn't happened yet? I thought it already happened.
Well, no, not the executive order kind of allowed that, but the DEA still has to go through these procedural hearings to be able to take it off the schedule themselves. And the only other way to take it off the Controlled Substances Act schedule would be to have a bill pass Congress, basically, and it would specifically remove it, just like they did with the Farm Bill in 2018 when they removed hemp off of the Controlled Substances Act completely. And that was in the last paragraph of the agricultural bill that had passed in 2018, basically removing hemp from the Controlled Substances Act and all of the administrative and executive holdings on that were relinquished by the federal government to allow the states to decide.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, again, like we were talking before the show, like their focus on hemp, I never knew hemp was actually considered a controlled substance. It's not. It can't be. Like, I don't know, like, it's just the chemistry of it doesn't allow for it. Like, it's just, that's very strange. Anyway, Dr. Mary, would you like to contribute to any of that?
Well, I can tell you a little bit of the history. I think what happened is the people who were producing paper for magazines and newspapers did not like hemp paper because it was undercutting their profits. So this is how hemp got to be illegal, I think, which is really interesting because I know when I lived in northern Kentucky for a while, it was growing wild. So how can you?
Hemp is like a magical plant. Like, it has a huge amount of like advantages to it.
Yes.
You can make oil from the seeds. You can make rope. You can make paper. You can make clothes. You can make, fabrics of all sorts. I mean, it's unbelievably resilient. Sorry, go ahead.
And it has medicinal properties too. I don't know all of them, but I know that there are some. And of course, when you add THC into the equation, it has medicinal properties as well. And so there's a lot of reason it should be legal. I mean, alcohol, for example, is legal, and it's quite a bit
1,000 times more dangerous than pot ever could be.
Exactly. You said it well.
That's one of those things that, like, I think frustrates a lot of people about, like, just laws in general. It's like it shows their bias. Like, there's just no way you can't, that if you look at the data, you can't tell that alcohol is so much more dangerous and problematic than pot, again, ever could be. But it's legal, but we have to go after pot because it's a dangerous. It's a gateway. That's a lot of the times I hear that about marijuana. It's a gateway drug. I mean, that's true, but every drug is a gateway drug. A gateway drug is just a drug that people tend to use before they go on to a harder drug. That's what it means. That being said, do you know what the number one gateway drug is? The one that most people start with? Beer.
Probably alcohol.
Beer is the number one gateway drug.
Beer? Okay.
So if the reason for making it illegal or doing whatever to it is that it's a gateway drug, well, then you should be consistent and range that over all things that are gateway drugs. Because when you start isolating these one thing over the rest that all fall into the same category of your description, it's rigged, it's biased. For some reason, you just don't like people. They don't like people who are stoners. They have the stigma, social stigma. They're lazy. They don't do, blah, 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 which isn't true. Some people smoke pot and they sit down and relax. Some people smoke pot and they like build a shed. Like, it just depends on like who the person is. Anyway, sorry, go ahead. I have a lot of this whole issue just pisses me off. But go ahead, sorry.
Oh yeah, definitely. And a lot of people are very frustrated with it too, because it's so confusing, and it's even more confusing now that they've separated the idea that there's two different types of cannabis, and what they call high THC marijuana is what they've attributed to. That's the name they've attributed to high THC cannabis. And then there's all of the other cannabinoid producing cannabis from the other hemps and grains and other types of strains of hemp that grow. So you have your oil types that you grow it for, specifically for CBD oil. You grow grain types specifically to grow the seed from it, to produce a good flower from it and produce a good seed from it. And then you have your fiber, which grows very tall and close together. And it's a different, but all of them produce cannabinoids, which, inside the plant, there's hundreds of these molecules that are these fatty acids called cannabinoid acids. And basically, what we're finding out in our studies, at least, is the nutritional value of the leaf and flower material is very, very valuable to us nutritionally. And the government has been really implanting a lot of the smoking and Cheech and Chong kind of mindset, applying that to cannabis throughout the years too, because like Dr. Ruwart said earlier, industry has been attacking cannabis for a long time because it does so many different things. It does everything basically that petroleum does. And it's not hemp ropes mooring up to ships and things in the harbor anymore. These are plastic ropes, and these are things produced through petroleum. And it was seen as a competition in the early days, and that really led to the attacks on it, and basically creating this moral attack and moral dilemma mindset, and what cannabis was kind of implanted through media and other types of material that they had pushed out.
Yeah, like back in the 1920s, before it was made illegal, there was a huge propaganda scheme that went on from like the bigger companies, and so like the ones you listed or talked about. Yeah, it was nasty. And then some suggest that there might have been some racial underpinnings to it too. Marijuana is a Spanish word, so you had the laborers coming from like Mexico who would smoke pot and stuff like that. And of course, back then, I mean, it's still present, but not as much as it was back then. It's just racial stuff.
Pancho Villa and his gangs were running across what was supposed to be the U.S. border, violating the U.S. border by doing their trade across the lines and ignoring the states, and that was what led to those moral attacks on those individuals down there, and leading to the name marijuana and attributing that to the Hispanic population coming up from the South.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And, of course, during World War II, they legalized hemp because they couldn't make things for the military, especially ropes and things like that, with anything else that would be strong enough. Not me personally, I should say my immediate family has my father's hammock. He was in the Navy, and it's made out of hemp, and it's still with us. Years and years and decades.
Really resilient stuff. Yeah.
And we've been using it, so it's sturdy.
Yeah, no, for sure.
That's amazing. Yeah. And it just lasts so long, and it's a great natural fiber, and it can't be competed against, especially with all the petroleum-based stuff. And you go through the supermarket and, the clothing stores now, and you look at the tags and you see what the material is. At least I do. And I try not to buy the more plastic materials, especially if I'm putting them on my kids and on my family. And they've shown that type of material on your skin and, over time, really does diminish you hormonally and other ways. Like it has an effect on you.
Yeah. So do you know like the characteristics of the reclassification from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3? Like what does that mean?
Basically, it opens it up to more drugs to be patented and leading to the market. And I think that pharma is really going to benefit mostly from the rescheduling, because they've been conducting lots of medicinal studies overseas outside the United States for a very long time. And they know that these cannabinoid based treatments are very effective against certain things like holding back, certain things with diabetes, or because these were proven in other patents too, that consuming cannabinoids in the diet, in a dietary sense, if you're consuming the oils or if you're consuming the extracts of the material, that it actually benefits you nutritionally and adds a whole other layer of nutritional benefit to your diet. And it's started to show that in a number of these medical conditions, it was actually reversing, if not completely relinquishing these people of the side effects of those conditions altogether. And it's because of the cannabinoids were being replaced in their body, and our body basically is controlled by an endogenous cannabinoid system. It's a lipid signaling system.
What does endogenous mean?
That means inside your body.
Oh, okay. Because it sounded like indigenous at first. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Yes, it's endogenous is inside your body. So it's an endocannabinoid system, for kind of short for that. And everything that's a vertebrate animal has this system, and it basically controls and regulates your whole body function by the cellular response back and forth using these endocannabinoids. And where you're deficient in these endocannabinoids, if you're consuming them in your diet, it's filling those spaces and it's causing those areas to work correctly again. So you see people using less diabetes insulin medication and insulin, or completely not in these studies that they conducted. Alzheimer's patients, of course, were having more days of clarity. They could remember who they were, and the Parkinson's patients had no tremors, and it stopped those tremors. So the neurological synapses that was happening incorrectly corrected itself once they introduced these phyto or plant cannabinoids into the diet to our endogenous cannabinoid system. And when you put it this way, it's and people are just so trained and so prone to go kind of back to smoking and not understand it as a nutritional or a food value to consuming these types of medium chain polyunsaturated fats and fatty acids in our diet.
All right, Dr. Mary Ruwart, you're a PhD in biophysics. Do you confirm everything?
Yes, we do have that system, and so it's very natural and not surprising that it does so much. In fact, my area of specialty was prostaglandins, or as they're known today, eicosanoids. And they interact with the cannabinoid system. So you get some very interesting things coming out of that, because eicosanoids have a plus or minus balance, like some lower blood pressure, some increase it. So there's always this balance happening. And that's true of the cannabinoids too that are in our body and our system. So it's not surprising at all that what William's saying is happening. Yeah. And he probably knows more about the endocannabinoid system than I do. But I do know that it interacts with the eicosanoid system, which is incredibly powerful. And every cell in our body makes those. So it's an important thing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. I mean, just to clarify real quick for the viewers, that it going from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 did not make it legal.
Not completely legal. It's still controlled in the Schedule 3. So everyone using it in that schedule now will have to apply for, allowance to be able to do whatever they want to do in that schedule, which the schedule allows for, more study and more use and things like that. So hopefully the expansion will go the correct way and more studies will happen and we will learn more about it, instead of having kind of this gated, everyone feels pretty gated in the cannabis community too, waiting for this to at least have access to this at our home, and have that, because that's where we're finding the highest nutritional value too, is the fresh plant material. And when we did our study on this first batch of hemp, when we put it next to spinach, when we put it next to kale, And
Wow.
we put it next to broccoli and Brussels sprouts. Those are
The
those
biggies.
are main greens right there, and it was head and shoulders above all of those greens in
Really?
potassium, calcium, iron, fats, edible fiber, and protein. And it had so much more than those other choices that we have on the current produce market, that people could be eating, raw leaf cannabis in their diet and consuming these fatty acids and cannabinoids in their raw form, because there's a process that happens that turns these fatty acids into what is known as THC. So in its plant form, before it turns into THC, it's THCA. So THCA, when you decarboxylate it or heat it to a certain temperature, a carbon atom leaves that molecule, and then it activates for the consumer to have a physiological effect. So if you don't have that activated, it doesn't get you high. It doesn't have those physiological effects to consuming cannabis in that way. It's just a dietary approach, and it's eating it raw in its raw plant form. And it's showing in a lot of these other studies that they're doing with animal feed and some of these other things, it's showing great benefit in, the leaf and flower material.
Interesting. Doctor?
Yeah, actually, while you were talking, William, I realized that, yes, there's actually some precursors to icosanoids in the cannabis plants, so that's basically, again, just confirmation that it interacts with a lot of our body's processes. And that's an important thing, because you rarely get a food that has fats that are appropriate. I mean, most people have to take fish oil to get enough eicosanoids in their body. And of course, taking something that has part of the building block is great, because that means you don't have to take as much fish oil. And I remember Barry Sears, who was the one who really pushed the fish oil idea and brought some of the fish oil initially to the US. He was concerned because he felt like if everybody wanted to take fish oil at the level that was optimal for the body, that it really was almost impossible for the world to do that. So that makes what's happening with hemp, even more important, because the type of precursor isn't exactly what's in fish oil, but it's something that can be transformed into what's needed for some of the eicosanoids. So this is an incredibly important thing. And the fact that our government is limiting its use, especially for food, is very troubling.
Or even just looking at it, because when I started this looking into this, I went to the USDA, I went to the FDA, and I said, hey, how do we do this? And I allowed them a chance to get on board with what we were doing and basically lead the charge on using their laboratories and their ability to do this. And we got down the road. I brought in the Indiana folks. I brought in the Indiana hemp folks and Purdue University. I brought in a doctor from the agricultural studies over there. And we talked about what we could do and what we couldn't do. And basically everywhere we went to try to figure out, because USDA they could have used Purdue's labs and whatever studies that we did and, verified whatever it was under whatever SOPs. And they could have overseen the study at the very least, and they refused to do that. They told us that they had to confer with NIH, which NIH is a completely separate department than the USDA. And USDA oversees the domestic hemp program altogether. They have the authority and laboratory at the Food Data Central to do this study, and we allowed them, a chance to get on board with it. And we knew that they were going to deny it anyway, but we had to give them a chance to be able to file that FOIA, to be able to tell, everyone else that we went there too. We allowed to give them a chance, and they failed. And they gave bogus excuses as to why they couldn't study this plant, which they have complete authority over.
Mhm. Well, I'm not surprised, especially with the FDA, because actually the FDA rarely, if ever, does their own studies. They actually make the pharma companies that want to get their drug approved do all their studies, and it takes about 11 years-ish, and then the FDA takes a year to look over the data. So they don't really do the studies themselves. So I'm not surprised you got no help at all from them. I don't know how
Yeah. They have
the,
to outsource everything that they do, and they don't even look into things unless there's a problem. Honestly,
No.
the FDA doesn't look into anything.
No, and it's been co-opted now by pharma, because what happened is in 1962, the amendments to the Food and Drug Act were so tyrannical that, pharma was pretty much relying on blockbuster drugs. So in 1992, the Prescription Drug User Fee Act was passed, and that basically said that the pharma companies could pay a user fee to the FDA if they wanted faster turnover. And now over 70% of the salaries of the people who are in the part of the FDA that approves drugs, 70% of their salaries are paid for by these user fees. So now it's been pretty much co-opted by pharma. And of course, pharma wants to take the natural products that are in hemp and cannabis, and they want to modify them just enough so they can get a patent on it, because frankly it costs well over, or at least it did before the Prescription Drug User Fee Act. I think things have flattened, but it's still about $2.5 billion to get one drug out the door. That's huge.
It's tremendous. And, regular drug companies too can't even compete with some of the stuff that these larger drug companies do. And they do ramrod things through. And we saw that at COVID. And,
Yes.
and I did work at the laboratories at Covance and LabCorp there in Indianapolis in that drug approval process, because we received all those specimens to test on the machine to give them that spreadsheet to the FDA. And it was absolutely money driven, and that's all that they were worried about in that whole process, and making sure that they had the data that they wanted to be able to reach the finish line first.
Yes, because 80 to 90% of the market for a new type of drug comes to the first to market. So that's why the race is on.
Wait, so could you say that again, Mary?
Yes, 80 to 90% of the market share of a new class of drugs goes to the person, or the company that actually is first to market that particular class of drugs. Yeah. It's so, and this is another thing. If the pharma companies, they have to be careful if they want to study hemp or cannabis, because if the FDA doesn't like the way they're doing it, they can punish the drug companies by dragging their feet on their approvals, and a market leader can be made second or third place by that process. So it's totally, well, I guess you could say corrupt. It's the right
Sounds
word.
rigged. Yeah.
Yeah, we're giving lots of inside bonuses and stuff to people to dig stuff out, during the COVID trials and things like that. So there was lots of incentive for those individuals.
Yeah, and I think it was 1970 that the Supreme Court said that the pharma companies could not sue the FDA for taking, a lot of time or even not approving their drugs. So, the pharma companies really have no recourse. So they have to kind of, be very careful what they say to the FDA and how they handle those relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely can make or break a market on any kind of drug or material reaching market for sure. And they can block whoever they want to block. And I mean, they're blocking study right now. It's not something that they're reaching for. It's not something that they care about.
Mm-hmm.
So actually studying and getting answers about, something especially like hemp or cannabis, they'll tout about how you should not consume, these cannabinoid acids. but they won't tell you the science or why behind why you shouldn't consume that, because they're not even doing that kind of science on this stuff. So it's like they're just repeating a message that they're programmed to repeat.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and the FDA does have to approve all the clinical trials that happen in the U.S. I mean, the IRBs have to, which are, the institutional review boards, which I've sat on one for 20 years. And I can tell you that, if the FDA doesn't like it and they want to play games with the studies, or even just deny the people who want to do those studies, deny them permission, then they really don't have any recourse.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why the Supreme Court decided that the FDA can't be sued?
I do know. But what happened when the 62 amendments passed, they were so brutal to the industry that the industry started suing. And so there were many, many lawsuits by the pharma companies. And the reason I know a lot about this is Upjohn, the company I worked for, was one of the primary people, because what happened is, it was very unfair. What happened is the FDA wanted to figure out which drugs that were already on the market were effective. So they had the National Academy of Sciences look at all the drugs on the market and decide which ones were good and which ones were not, based on clinical experience, which was the standard of the time. But what happened is that National Academy of Science had people on it that thought combination antibiotics are not a good thing. So all combination products they wanted to take off the market. And Pan-Elba, one of the combination antibiotics that Upjohn put out, was one of the ones they wanted to take off. And they had, of course, they'd marketed it for 10 years, and they got something like 5,000 clinicians to write to the National Academy of Sciences saying, we need this. And part of the reason they needed it is, if you have, back then they couldn't really, it wasn't easy to figure out which bacteria you had. So if you didn't know that, you didn't know which antibiotic to put. So what happened is, if you took the combination, you were more likely to hit the right microbe. And an additional thing, you were less likely to get a resistance. Everybody's heard about how the antibiotics of today just don't kill the bacteria anymore because there's resistance. And when you give a combination, you have less resistance. And this is what we're doing with the HIV patients today. We're giving them combination antivirals to make sure they can't, the virus can't figure out how to protect itself, right? And so that's the way we're controlling the AIDS epidemic, basically by using combination products. But at the time, they started taking these off the market, and Upjohn argued, well, we've had 10 years where the FDA didn't have any safety issues with this product. And the clinicians love it. It was cheaper for the patient to have, a combination than take 2 pills, and they were more likely to take it. They were more likely to be compliant. And the thing is, if you give one antibiotic and you guess wrong, by the time you figure it out back then, because it took them a few days to figure out, what the bacteria was, the person might be on death's door, and the second antibiotic wouldn't help them. So this is the kind of thing that happened. And there were multiple suits. It wasn't just Upjohn, multiple suits. And that's why the Supreme Court said, hey, if we have to hear every case where these drugs are being taken off the market, that's all we'll be able to do. So, we're going to just say you can't do it.
Overwhelm them.
Didn't Biden put some sort of stigma on suing pharmaceutical companies? Like, he made it illegal or something? Did you hear about that? Something like he did something that protected pharmaceuticals.
Oh, he gave him.
I know you're talking about the FDA. I get that.
Right.
But
okay.
Similar shenanigans happened under Biden. Go ahead, sorry.
That's right. He gave immunity to the COVID manufacturers.
Oh, that's what
and that's because now the logic was, well, we were giving them an EUA, an emergency use authorization, because we really don't know if these things are safe or not. So the government is going to take over paying people who were hurt. The problem with that is they didn't fund the group of people, the agency that was supposed to do that. They gave them a pittance. So what's happened, and you only had a year to apply too. So, if you didn't know you had this year clock ticking, you might not get there in time because you're sick. You're trying to figure out what happened to you. So what happened is, that hardly anybody got compensated, and the people who didn't get anything near what they needed to get, to fix the problem. And so it's been the private sector that's helped these people out, both with donations and in developing treatments for their problems. Because the FDA claims that the COVID vaccines were safe and effective. Right. And no drug is perfectly safe. No drug is ineffective because there's always the placebo effect. So, it just doesn't make any sense to say that. In fact, if any drug company said that about their product, if they said, oh, our product is safe and effective, the FDA would come after them for false advertising.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And they said that over and over and over again, knowing that, and the two that were in the lab that we had were samples from people who had received the Janssen pharmaceutical injection and the AstraZeneca injection. And these were coming from, South America and Asia and all kinds of other places. But the plasma and serums should have been free of material, but we were seeing lots of chains and like little materials that we were commenting on, being told not to make comment on the physical appearance and some of these materials that we were receiving, and just get it to the lab and get it to the spot where it needs to go to get the testing done so they can fill that, fill that spreadsheet out. It, even though we were saying it's really clogging up the pipettes and it's really causing an issue for some of these people trying to, put them into smaller containers and get them into these testing units. And, they did not like those comments being made about, the physical attributes of the samples coming across, some of our desks that we were commenting on either.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they changed the manufacturing process from the clinical trials to the worldwide distribution. And the process they used to ramp up put DNA fragments, or left, I should say, DNA fragments in the vaccine. And of course, there's always the possibility that DNA is going to get incorporated into your own genome. And what they did, instead of warning anybody, they chopped the stuff up, which makes it even more likely to be put into your own genome. And we have patients that after 7 years after the vaccine are still producing spike protein. And my suspicion, I haven't seen evidence for it, although there may be, probably these people have had the misfortune of getting the manufacturing system of the RNA into their DNA, and it's not going to go away. I mean, they're going to have to live with this, and this is scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, I heard LabCorp will actually measure, without a doctor's prescription, will actually measure the amount of spike protein in our bodies. I haven't ordered that yet, but I would like to, just in case. I didn't take the vaccine, but I think I might have been shed upon by someone who did. I was working in close quarters, helping one of the foster moms. I was in a kind of a kitten rescue situation, and these kittens get ringworm, so I was helping her treat her kittens, and that's something you do every day. So I was in a tight, little tiny bathroom that we were doing this in. So I just want to be sure.
It would be interesting, yeah, even for me, handling a lot of those samples and things like that too, to see if any of that kind of went through on any of that, to see if any exposures were relevant, especially in one's body. So even if someone hadn't had the vaccine, if they were close to somebody who had, there's always that potential that, that can be crossed over too. That's it's just such a wild aspect to even think about, and to what, what some of these medical examiners are pulling out of some of these individuals' bodies now. And, they don't know what's causing some of this stuff either. And it really has to be tied back to ramrodding some of this stuff through and allowing, that process to be violated, and not understanding what we were doing completely before we allowed a mass, distribution of this stuff before we caught it, I think.
Mhm.
Do you think the rescheduling from 1 to 3 will encourage states to make it recreationally legal? Do you think that is? I haven't heard of anything since they.
I think it'll make it easier, absolutely, and it'll encourage states to
I think
take.
most states have it medicinally legal, not all of them, but I think, but then fewer than that have it recreationally legal, but still quite a few.
10 states, and Indiana is included, does not have a medical program for.
No, not even medical.
No, we do have hemp products in the state, so you can get your hemp THC and other kind of cannabinoids for dietary stuff, but still access to raw plant material, and in a good dietary sense is pretty costly in the state of Indiana. It compared to other states, you could probably get it at a value somewhere else, but since we're the way that the laws are in the state, and people fight for that regulatory area too. In the business area, they really have to fight for their areas to be able to dispense in the state of Indiana. And a lot of businesses died over the years because of, and we're surrounded by states that allow purchase for adults of a high THC cannabis known as marijuana. So people just cross the border and they just buy cannabis and they come back to the state of Indiana.
It's both medicinally and recreationally legal in Illinois, but recreationally the prices are very high, the taxes are ridiculous, so people still go to like Michigan and just come back.
Yeah, and the taxes are even higher there. I mean, and the competition.
Well, for some reason, the
much
average prices are lower than here.
Average, yeah, absolutely. And now you can buy ounces for pennies on the dollar of what you could buy before. Like it's
$100 an ounce.
Well, I was just going to say, it's so much. I've heard a lot of people complaining that the black market is still active because it's cheaper in the black market.
Yeah, and people get better stuff now because of some of the molds and other mass producing issues that some of these other companies have. On the black market, it may be safer in some of these other areas where it's legal to consume it because of some of these other.
Yeah, but the black market is also fueling like the cartels and gangs and all sorts of stupid people like that. I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. But there is something I got to say reassuring about a recreational dispensary. Like again, you can because you get to choose from whatever strain and amount of THC or CBD that you want. So it's pretty cool. It is costly. It's more costly than the black market for sure. But it's again, I've smoked pot since I was 19, 20 years old. I'm 56. And I never had a problem before it was made legal, ever. Nobody ever got sick. Nobody, nothing ever bad happened to anybody. So there's that for sure. But at the same time, and I think one compared to the other, I would prefer the legal avenue and the dispensaries over the black market, just generally speaking.
Well, yeah, and that's what a lot of people want it to be too. If they go and consume, they want to go and consume from a trusted merchandise or merchant who has good merchandise, who's actually working in that regulatory system and ensuring what they're putting out there is safe and effective and it works for people. And I think in general, a lot of people, that's what they want, and they don't want to put out something that's going to be harmful to someone or it's going to hurt someone or give them a bad experience whatsoever. But unfortunately, those things do happen, and especially more in an unregulated market, that's going to happen. But that's people taking advantage of the markets too and flooding. I mean, we've seen a lot of these hemp products in the state of Indiana that are not from the United States, but they're legal here because of, what they are. And under those statutory and code terms, it's at least legal in those terms. But, it's coming from like China. It's coming from India. We don't know what process they had making it. We don't know how clean their source material was or how they grew it. It was organic, those type of things. And those are the important things in the manufacturing process that people need to understand and need to know and understand what they're getting to make sure it's a good product.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, yeah, and like I said, you can pick the kind of strain you want, indica, sativa, and then more specifically after that, different strains have different effects, generally speaking, on people. Some make you sleepy and tired, some make you laugh at stupid stuff. That's the stuff I like. And again, you can pick the level and amount of THC you want. If you're kind of a lightweight, you pick 18, 19%. If you want it good, you get a vape pen and it's got 90% THC. You're like, woohoo, THC, besides all the other medicinal benefits, THC is fun, folks. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And these other cannabinoids too are very beneficial to us. And that's, a lot of people who consume for a long time look for those terpenes, those flavonoids, those other things that come along with those cannabinoids too. And it's not just THC, but it's CBD, it's CBG, it's the other hundreds of cannabinoids in this, because it's doing a certain something for someone consuming it in a dietary sense. And really to see how well the study did come out, this initial study, we're doing a follow-up study that's going to be a more detailed study on federally legal hemp, and it'll be on the same strain. It'll be on a grain strain, and it's primarily grown for its grain source. But we tested the flowers, the leaves, and the seeds of the material to see what nutritional value were in those. And then we tested the leaves and the flowers alone without seeds to see how the nutritional difference was without seeds, because the government has only done the seeds. They've only admitted to the seeds being a food, or, leaning into that being some sort of, nutrient rich object of the plant. But the flowers and the leaves, what they've been demonizing and focusing on smoking so much, are actually the most nutritious portions of the plant when we're talking about calcium and potassium and iron being consumed in our diet through a plant green sense. And these are and the uptake of this is what we're going to find out in the next study, is the bioavailability of the uptake of these nutrients, how our body, accepts those, and how much nutrient we are able to absorb when we include these things into our diet. And when we talk to a lot of people, they think, oh, well, they think of it as someone just eating cannabis and that's all they're eating. It's like, no, it's not that. It's an additive, or it's like you would put an arugula on a salad, or you would put something, you would add it to your diet somewhere. You would add it, you would crumble dried flour into your soups or your stews or those type of things, and add it into your diet in that normal sense that we should be using it turns out.
Well, real quick, let me ask you, like, if you eat it raw, like, let's take a little like flour and just sort of, over a salad, and you eat it, are you going to feel psychoactive effects?
Other than feeling good, no, not really. I mean, you're not going to have a lot of, you're not going to have a huge physiological effect from that, because the flour itself has not been what's known as decarboxylated, what I was saying earlier. So that carbon atom still remains in the THC and CBD in that material. So you would have to, now if you took that flour and crumbled it over a boiling pot of soup or stew, you would have a happy soup, is what.
Because pot brownies. I mean, people do this. I've had a few of my day, and man, oh man, you better clear your schedule for the day, folks, because you're not going anywhere.
Yes.
Those things are intense.
Yeah. Now, and that's the difference too in consuming that as a food product too. It's going to do other things in your dietary, in your gastrointestinal area and your uptake, as far as nutrients go. But it's turning out that maybe this is a micronutrient that we're missing from our diet traditionally.
That's really interesting. I didn't know about the nutritional value as much.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. and we have eradicated it pretty much in the Department of Interior. So the cattle who graze would normally come upon hemp and eat that hemp, and then we would consume those cattle. We're not having that secondary consumption anymore. So that leads to further inflammatory diseases and other things because we're leaving out those lipids that we would normally be consuming in our diet. Because and it doesn't have to be a whole lot. It's just a small amount, to be added to the diet.
Sounds interesting. That's very cool. Okay, can we approach this from one more vantage point, and then I'll let you go. We're all libertarians. You two are actually active in the party itself. I'm just more philosophically a libertarian. I was in the party.
And Mary just came back from Freedom Fest.
Yes, and after the show, I'd like to hear about that if you don't mind.
Yes.
But from the libertarian point of view towards this, obviously libertarians tend to be like my body, my business. All drugs should be at least decriminalized. If not legally protected. I don't know. Some would say that, some don't. It's my body. I'll do whatever I want to it. Like, okay, so go ahead. What do you think from that point of view?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, most of the, at least in the 80s, 90s, most of the deaths were not due to, quote, real overdose. They were due to the material that people cut them with.
Yeah, no,
so
absolutely.
And even when it was not cut with something toxic, you never knew what you were getting. So what people tended to do instead of taking it orally is they took it IV. So that, because it was very expensive too. So IV,
you get that instant.
100% gets it. Yeah. Your body, right? If you're taking it orally, probably not 100% is absorbed. So then people would die because you make a miscalculation on an IV dose and that's it for you. So that was like 80% of the drug-induced deaths. So in other words, all these things were killing people. And I've even heard reports that the government adulterated, during Prohibition, adulterated alcohol to kill people and scare them and make them not drink, which
that didn't work.
No, that didn't. Not only did it not work, it killed people. So, I mean, they're willing to murder people to make them, well, of course, this is not news to anyone here. They're willing to kill people to get the government control.
Yeah, no, I would not doubt that for a moment. I mean, I haven't heard that, but I mean, it would not be the CIA, and that was so crazy. Another reason why I'm a libertarian is the governments tend to be a bad idea. So the governments start the wars, they commit the crimes, they're hypocrites, they're corrupt. They get to do things that no other person gets to do and get away with it. It's ridiculous.
And I'll say one more thing about that. The reason we have IRBs today and we have the Nuremberg Code and everything else is, well, it was supposed to stop all this type of thing the Nazis did. But in fact, our government, the U.S. government, actually did terrible things. And they are the ones that have violated those codes most of all. I mean, having mandates for the COVID vaccine is the most recent example. But, they were aware that there were these Black people that had syphilis. And they studied them for a long time. That when the cure came, they didn't even let them know about it. I mean, this is terrible.
That's a famous one. Yeah, no, for sure.
Mm-hmm. We don't see this happening as much in the private sector as we do in the government sector. So,
and they'll never admit to it until they have to admit to it. And that's the sad part, is they have to be forced to admit those type of things and doing and conducting those type of actions upon their own people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, and the list goes on, guys. I mean, there's the syphilis study. I remember hearing about the syphilis study many times. There's other things. I mean, you think about like the Japanese internment camps in World War II, and I mean, we can go. I mean, I don't know if it's beating a dead horse at this point, but like we can go back to slavery, we can go back to the Jim Crow laws. These are all laws that were highly immoral. Blah 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 blah. When laws aren't based on morality, like just kind of basic general morality, you got serious problems. And that's why another part of the libertarian thing I love is as it's the party of principles. It actually like reduces things down to like, principles and moral actions and behavior, that you are free to choose what you want to choose. But remember that with freedom comes responsibility, and with responsibility comes accountability. So yes, you are free. Absolutely. That doesn't mean you get to be an idiot.
If you end up paying if you're an idiot and you take stuff that's not good for you.
Right. And talking about like the cutting of the drugs, it reminded me of like the cocoa plant. The cocoa plant was something like, I don't remember like what civil it was, Aztec, Mayan, or what's the other one? Not Indica. What the hell was it called?
Incan.
Incan, thank you. I don't know what civilization they belong to, or if two or more of them. But like the cocoa plants in South America were actually people would just eat the cocoa plants. It would give them energy to like haul their stuff up a mountain or down a mountain, whatever else. But and so the cocoa plant in and of itself is not dangerous. It's actually quite advantageous for a lot of things. But you cut it with, all sorts of crap, it could kill you.
Yeah.
Starting up your nose like that.
They literally make it out of gasoline. So
yeah, I mean, it's nuts.
Yeah.
And these other synthetic drugs like methamphetamine and other stuff, like just nuts stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I remember that there were surgeons, very famous surgeons, who had cocaine addictions, and they were, as long as they had their drug, they were fine, and they did great operations. And then, of course, if they overdid it, of course, that wouldn't happen. But most of them controlled it perfectly because they had to, it had to be on.
They had to have it to keep a steady hand.
Exactly.
The doctors, they knew exactly how much would keep
but they had those.
But not.
Yeah. You described the favorable effects, which is what they used, because in some arenas of surgery, like transplantation, you have to be on your feet for a long time. I remember I was working with one of Startzel's doctors. He was the one who started liver transplantation, and liver was one of my, areas of expertise. And so we were doing surgery one day. He came to visit. I can't remember the reason, but he said, I'm really surprised you didn't get an MD and become a transplant surgeon. And I said, well, I can't go without sleep for 48 hours, stand on my feet and do surgery well. And he said, oh, yeah, that's a requirement. Yeah. I wasn't kidding, and he wasn't kidding.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I mean, it's good. Nice that it's good that you knew your limitation at that point. Like, that's just, no, I don't want to do that. You go to this other area because it's more your style.
Yeah.
I worked in a hospital out in Portland, Oregon. I got to know some of the doctors and surgeons and stuff. It's tough stuff, man. That's a tough job. It really is.
Yeah.
And you're going to get sued by everybody. Because, so like it's such a very, not a very grateful position. That's good. That's good for you. William, did you want to say anything about the libertarian point of view on this?
I mean, really, Libertarian Party, they've went, they're Indiana, we're going into our 52nd year. We just had our 52nd birthday for our state party. But yeah, the Libertarians have been fighting for legalization for a long time, for access to all drugs that adults can consume as adults and not be punished legally or criminally, or afford those types of consumptions if they so choose to consume. And if they're not harming anyone and they're not harming themselves, what does it hurt to be able to consume something that is completely upon the user themselves? How is the state a victim in any way, in any legal sense, that someone consumes a substance of any kind? And I don't think that the state can, or should play victim as much as they have and still do when regarding cannabis and other things. And, cannabis is a way to violate our Fourth Amendment rights. They say, I smell cannabis. And then they say, well,
Yes.
Without a warrant, how do they do it? They have to have the dog come and check. So the dog comes.
Yeah,
to
the
sniff.
dog sniffing around the car and stuff like that, and that has its problems too, because it just like it's kind of lower levels of accuracy.
Mhm.
Like I saw a
The dog
video.
always hits if they want to look in your car. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
it's
if the dog
bullshit.
is there, it's going to hit, and
Yeah,
they're
right,
going to look at
exactly.
your car, whether they find anything or not. They're still going to
Right.
waste their time or your time.
I
And
remember. Sorry, go ahead.
but it just gives them that ability to violate that right that you have, that Fourth Amendment right to you didn't do anything to provoke a search or seizure on your person, place, or things. And somehow the police are given this, magic authority to violate that Fourth Amendment rights based on scent or what they may see or whatever in a car.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I remember seeing a video of a guy who got pulled over, and whatever he got pulled over for didn't really take. I don't know, whatever, speeding or whatever it was. So the cop's like, I smell marijuana. And the guy's like, starts laughing. He's like, no, you don't. He's like, nobody's ever smoked pot. And he's like, I don't smoke pot, blah, blah, blah. And the guy's like, I smell marijuana. He's like, stop lying. No, you don't. And the video kind of ended there. So I don't know what happened, but like, it was just, he's like, bullshit. Just stop it.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to tie all this to the LP, the Libertarian Party, Steve Cubby was a libertarian. He actually ran for president in a presidential nomination in 2008. And he was the first legal medical marijuana patient in the country.
Wow.
He had permission from the government to grow his own because he had this, I believe it was adrenal carcinoma. And it was very vicious, and he took it, and he lasted another, I'm taking a little bit of a guess on the timing, but about 30 years before, he finally died. And this was due really, in fact, they put him in jail because one of the problems with this type of cancer is it shoots your blood pressure up. So they put him in jail at one point, and he almost died because his blood pressure was going up without his medicine, and they finally had to let him go, or, the people who were taking care of him, they were not happy with the situation because they knew they'd be blamed, as you might imagine. And so they petitioned for him to be, I guess what he got the legal, what was legal at that time, which was, William, you know what I'm talking about. The medical marijuana for cancer patients.
Mm-hmm. It's the compassionate care, and
what was it?
Lawsuit.
What was it called? Isn't it?
There was a name, Marinol or something like that. Okay,
Marinol was one of the medications that was.
Yes, so he got that, but he didn't get his normal better treatment. But at least that brought his blood pressure down somewhat. But he was one of the organizers of the Medical Marijuana Act that California passed. And, so the LP actually contributed to where we are now, whereas most states up until this point have had some form of legalization of marijuana. So
both the major parties have not done anything like they should.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes.
And the Libertarian Party has been on the sidelines saying the same thing for a very long time, especially in this stance. And they've been juggling us back and forth, just throwing that ball back and forth to each other. The Democrats were in power enough, and they had enough support, in the election cycle to legalize cannabis. But what did they do? They didn't. The same thing with the Republicans, and they are promising, cannabis reforms and those type of things. And we still don't see those type of things. We didn't see that in 2016. We didn't see that in 2020. We didn't see that in 2020.
Yeah, Biden and Harris said that they were going to legalize it at the. I don't think they talked about it the entire 4 years.
Yeah.
This is another bullshit campaign promise. Sorry.
Exactly. And cannabis, at least at the federal level, hemp's been legal since 2018. And it's really sad that our federal agencies refused to conduct any type of this nutritional testing. To basically, it verifies all of the U.S. patents that were passed and basically awarded on the application of cannabinoids in the diet for certain medical conditions. And that's what the only way that it was attributed to an actual medical benefit was through the U.S. Patent Office. Whoever was operating in the U.S. Patent Office from 99 to 2003 and a little bit beyond really did allow that agency to verify that these things work for people.
Very interesting. Yeah. Okay. Again, that baffles me, the whole hemp thing. Like, I didn't even, it just became legal in 2018, 8 years ago. Hemp.
Yeah. And it's the same exact plant as what they call marijuana. Produces the same types of plants, same types of strains. It looks and smells and feels the same exact thing. It just produces different cannabinoids at different levels. And those oils are just a little bit different from each other molecularly.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, it's been an hour. That flew by because that was a fascinating conversation. Thank you both for coming on, Dr. Mary Ruwart and William Henry. Thank you again. Very, very interesting stuff. Always informative talking to each and both of you. I appreciate it. So, yeah, let's keep in touch and see if we can come back on. We can either talk about this again or some other stuff. I always like having libertarians on the show. You know what I would like to do real quick? I'm going to say this in front of everybody. Is I'd like to have libertarians on just to talk about current events in general. Like this was about a very specific something today. And I love that. That's fine. But like, just, have from the libertarian point of view, what do you think is going on? Like, the speech last night with Trump and all that nonsense. Stuff like that. Anyway, so thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to Let's Talk Lake County. I'm your host, David Rich. Till next time, keep talking. All right, hold on, guys.
Thank you, David, for having us and having this.
Thank you so much.
You betcha. Anytime.
Food first.